Thanks for clicking on Conversations with Crosswinds Counseling. I'm Curtis Smith, and I invite you to subscribe to our podcast and to like and share it as well. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Crosswinds Counseling. I'm your host, Curtis Smith. Joining me today is Danna Hamilton, one of the counselors here at Crosswinds Counseling. Danna is a licensed therapist. Danna, thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well as well. Let's learn a little bit about you before we dive into our topic of the day, which is anxiety in children. But Danna, you've been with Crosswinds Counseling for about 2 years.
Yes.
Got your license a few months back. What is working at Crosswinds Counseling like? Is the counseling world what you expected it to be? Is your work day what you thought it might be?
My work day is, I think, better than what I thought it would be. There's
Great.
a lot of flexibility here, and I love being at Crosswinds because I get to bring Christ into my sessions a lot more than I would otherwise, which is important to me.
I was going to ask you about that later, but let's dive into that right now. How do you walk that line of bringing your faith into the conversation? Because I assume some clients want that, some might not. So how do you do that balancing act? How do you walk that line?
Sure. So always there's just the presence of trying to bring Christ through myself in this session, of just being there for the client.
Yeah.
And obviously, when they're open to talking about Christ, we'll dive a little bit deeper.
Do you find that bringing Christ into the conversation and talking about things from a faith perspective, does that cause better counseling, deeper conversations, more productive results?
I have seen that, yes.
That's good to know. I mean, that makes sense intellectually,
Yeah.
but I'm no counselor, so I'm not in those sessions, obviously, and wouldn't know. But it makes sense that it would help all those things.
Yes, I've seen a lot of progress when I get to bring Christ into the sessions.
Perfect. Well, Danna, let's talk about our main topic today. It's something that you're passionate about because you work with a lot of kids.
Yes.
First, give us a sense of that. You are on kind of the school side of what we do here at Crosswinds Counseling. And we've talked about this before on the podcast. We have EAP clients in businesses and churches and schools. And so you spend about half your time counseling kids in school.
Yes.
And this is mainly young kids, right?
Yes, preschool through 8th grade.
Okay. What does anxiety look like when you're working with those kids?
It looks a lot like not wanting to do things, a lot of resistance. Especially, I see a lot of kids who are really scared to go to school for one reason or another. A lot of times they don't even know why they're scared to go to school, but it'll be panic attacks in the mornings, sometimes even getting sick in the mornings because they don't want to go to school.
Physically sick.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the majority of what it looks like. A lot of resistance.
And you said, again, kind of pre-K to 8th grade is mainly where you're working. So what's the youngest age that you're working with?
Right now, my youngest is 4.
Wow. So anxiety in a 4-year-old, that feels like it would be very hard to identify.
Yes.
What does that look like in a 4-year-old?
It can take a lot of different forms. A lot of times it looks like trying to avoid things, and sometimes it comes out as an anger, especially when they're faced with whatever they're nervous about. That's usually what I see.
So I barely remember being 4. It was a long, long time ago. But I'm pretty sure that there was a lot of stuff I didn't want to do, and I might throw a fit about it, or I probably didn't want to do it and just didn't do it. That feels like kind of normal 4-year-old behavior to me. So deciphering what's normal versus what is actual anxiety, what tip might you have for parents of young kids out there to help them identify the difference between, oh, this is my kid being normal, this is just child behavior, versus something that might require some counseling, anxiety or stress or something else that's actually deep-seated in a problem that you need to get to the bottom of?
Sure. I think one of the best ways to figure out the difference is how repetitive it is. If it's the same thing every time that they're getting nervous about and reacting to, that's probably more of an anxiety. Whereas if it's just a one-time thing, they wanted the toy and they didn't get the toy, that's pretty normal.
Probably don't need to go to counseling for that.
Yes.
But I like that the pattern is something that as parents I think we can identify.
Yeah.
This is because so many times with kids you think, oh, this is unusual behavior, what's going on? You can probably say, well, that's not anxiety. But when you start to identify that pattern.
Yeah.
And then what is working with kids like? Not even just 4-year-olds, but as you get into elementary school, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, I imagine they're not easy to work with. It's hard to pull stuff out of them. So when you're in counseling sessions with kids, how do you get in there with them and start to make real progress?
Yes. So it is difficult and it takes a long time to practice and get used to it, but essentially it's a lot of play. Play is work for kids. That's how they figure everything out. And in the therapy sessions, especially with the younger kids, it looks a lot like just letting them play and kind of bring you along on the journey. Every once in a while, especially if there's something big that I know has happened, I'll bring up the topic and say, hey, I know about this. And then I just let them, with that thought in their mind, lead the session, play however they need to, and they will guide me most of the time and tell me what character to play or what rules to follow. And it's very interesting that usually I can see a theme. For example, if we're working through a death and they're nervous about death now, they will sometimes, if they're Christian, they'll bring in, okay, now we're in Jesus' world and Jesus is guiding us through this. And I can tell that they're processing a death. They might not know that, but I don't need to tell them what they're working through. They're doing it through their play.
Interesting. Am I right in thinking that's almost an exact reversal from working with an adult? This is what I'm thinking. Tell me if I'm wrong. So working with an adult, you guide the conversation. You have to ask a lot of questions to kind of pull them along. It sounds like with a child, you're letting them lead the way. You're planting a thought and then seeing where it takes them. Is that a fair way to think about it? It's kind of a reversal of adult counseling? It
kind of is, which is why it can be tricky to get the hang of it, because in school you're really taught more how to counsel an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Besides identifying patterns, what other tips might you have for any parent watching today who thinks, I'm not sure, my child might need counseling, or maybe a parent who thinks, my child probably does need counseling, but I'm not sure about it. I'm not sure about getting them in to see a therapist. Is that the right decision? What tips, what advice might you have for parents kind of thinking through some of those things?
Sure. I would say talk to your kid about it. Most of the time when we're dealing with an anxious child, they like to know what's going on. So giving them options and letting them see if they think that they want to talk to somebody new, that would be a good idea. And then just giving them tools, typically working with what they already have. I like for kids to create a calm down corner at home. That's what I call it. And it's just a lot of sensory things. So for touch, for example, you would put stuffed animals and soft blankets, or for scent, you'd put a lotion or an essential oil diffuser with scents that they enjoy, and just give them a space to see if they can work through it on their own and let them participate in creating the space. Sometimes that helps. If it doesn't, then we might need to bring in a third party.
Interesting. Good tips. Danna, thank you so much. Danna Hamilton is one of the skilled therapists here at Crosswinds Counseling. And if you would like to connect with Danna or anyone else The best way to do that is to go to the website, crosswindscounseling.org. You can read all about Danna and all the therapists that Crosswinds Counseling offers. You can schedule an appointment and dig in deeper with who Crosswinds is. But Danna, thank you for being on the podcast today. We really appreciate your time. And we'll see you next time on Conversations with Crosswinds Counseling. Thanks for watching Conversations with Crosswinds Counseling today. I hope it was helpful for you. Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. Like and share it as well. We appreciate that and hope you have a great day.